who instinctively take personal responsibility for themselves and their families eventually realize that being atomized, rootless cosmopolitans inhibits their ability to exercise their willpower. Male agency naturally leads into the creation of a patriarchy. Raise your sons to be strong, masculine, and dominant. Raise your daughters to be soft, feminine, and submissive. The bad behavior that we see from women today is simply a rebellion against men's failure to benevolently dominate. The failure of Western society is a failure to maintain the patriarchy.
Welcome back to the Patriarchy. I'm James Fox Higgins, and once again I am joined by Noah Revoy. How are you, Noah?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Excellent. Now we definitely have sound coming through, and welcome to everyone who's watching already. This is our 6th edition of Patriarch Hour. It's great to be finally rolling with this project. I've enjoyed it immensely, and found it to be very educational, just chatting with you, Noah, and talking through these ideas in real time. And I think that a lot of men and women are going to find this series to be one of the more educational programs on YouTube. Also streaming live to DLive tonight if you want to get off the Google platform, and you can watch it later on, of course, at rationalrise.tv, which is our own platform. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is getting more in-depth into GSRRM, which has a few different acronyms applied to it now because the concept has sort of developed over time. But the original acronym was GSRRM. And we did talk about this briefly last week, Noah. We shared this tweet of yours, that the narcissists and psychopaths have a powerful superweapon called GSRRM. It's a socially engineered tool to kill our people's agency and make us easily manipulatable. Good news, we have documented their tactics and developed foolproof counters. Now we must deploy them. So tonight we're going to explore those counters and give some real examples of them from your Twitter feed, which is always an absolute hotbed of argumentation from those who like to use these tactics. What can you tell us about the background of the idea of GSRRM and its basic structure before we get into the analysis?
So GSRRM has always existed to some degree. And when mass media became a thing, when it was possible to propagandize large groups of people, it was found that in Western society, it was much easier to control people through shame and rallying and gossiping and reputation destruction than it was through violence. If you have 3 ways to get things from people. You can negotiate a reciprocal arrangement. You can be stronger than them. That's a super predator way, and take things from them, or you can shame them into giving it to you. And in many totalitarian societies, they focus on the violence that they take. But in Western society, Western people were extremely resistant to that. We would rebel. The British tried to do that to the Americans, and they had a revolution over it. And so it was discovered that shaming people into giving you things was the easy route. That worked a lot better for a lot of people. And it just snowballed from there. Once parasitical type people recognize there's a button they can press to get free stuff, they'll just press that button until the machine breaks. And that's really what we've been seeing in Western society is a concerted, organized effort to shame Western people into following a pattern that makes it easy for us to be manipulated. And so a little while ago, Kurt Doolittle started to take a look at the specific details of how they were doing that. And he has this superpower of being able to take complexity and map it out into something that is easy to see and recognize. And once, I guarantee you, the people who were deploying GSRRM on an industrial scale understood it. But now that we understand it, we can deploy the counters to it. And really, these type of videos that we're making today are part of deploying the counter to that. We're educating people on what it is that's being used against us and how they can defend themselves.
Excellent. So let's get into the current iteration of the sequence, essentially, of these tactics. As we said, it began as GSRRM, which is gossip, shaming, rallying, ridicule, and moralization. But But Kurt and others have worked hard at breaking these down into a finer iteration where we can look at it in a very granular way at all of the various modes of attack that are used. But all of them, essentially, in the way I read them, are essentially ways of turning lies into weapons that trigger the emotions in others to force them to succumb to the lie or subscribe to the lie. They're essentially dishonest because, when we're speaking as good, intelligent men should, truthfully and in a dialectical manner, we present arguments against each other when there's disagreement, and ultimately the greater argument wins. The stronger case will change a mind and we'll reach agreement. That's how honest people operate. But when there's an agenda, usually a power agenda at play here, it's not about convincing the other person to be on your side because the truth is against you. It's about shaming the other person or triggering the emotions in the other person that make them feel the fear of the consequences of their disagreeableness. So it's a way of getting sheep to get in line. And let's go through the list and start to look at some examples.
Yeah, so just to let you know what the list is, it's disapproving, outraging, ridiculing, shaming, moralizing. This doesn't mean that morals are wrong. It's a specific use of morals as a weapon. Psychologizing, denying, rallying, gossiping, propagandizing, undermining, and reputation destruction. And I've actually found one example of each from my Twitter feed that was as a response to me. Almost all of these were a response to a very simple message that I said, men have a few preferences. And I mentioned, it makes sense that men have certain preferences in what kind of women they want to date. And then I got these results. These are the results I received.
Great. Well, before we get into those, I just want to touch on moralizing. I did a little last week for anyone who watched, but for me, all of those are pretty obviously, bad things to do to somebody where the truth is against you. And but for me, moralizing was the hardest one to get my head around and my heart around when it was being presented, quite aggressively in the King of the Hill games that Kurt likes to play online. Seeing the way he would sort of point out moralization as a bad thing. And it's making that distinction that you alluded to just before, that morals are not a bad thing. In fact, morals are the essence of what is good and bad. We need a moral framework to make any decisions about the things we want more of in the world and in our lives and the things we want less of. And I would argue that morals come from God and they're a gift in the human heart to separate us from, to separate good from evil. Other people have different ideas about how moral structures develop in cultures, and certainly not every culture shares the same moral values. And not all morals are true, not all morals are equal. But to moralize is to, rather than dealing with issues of fact, to essentially say that it's wrong or bad of you to even talk about those things. And this is something that comes up a lot and takes a great deal of thick skin, I think, and courage to break through when you're beginning down the red pill rabbit hole about the state of the world. When we start to talk about issues like immigration, when we start to talk about ideas like the national averages of IQ and about the differences between men and women. Even now, the fact that there are differences between men and women is in moral dispute because of the moralization of the globo homo trans world activists who are saying that it's evil to even suggest that men and women are different. And so, of course, in your tweet that you wrote about the preferences that most men have about, in what makes a good partner, what makes a good woman to become a wife and the mother of your children, a lot of what we are about to see, I suspect, is going to be people saying that it's bad and wrong of you to suggest that men have preferences that would be any different to women. So, just that idea to put things that are not moral issues whatsoever into a moral framework, it's kind of a two-step sequence back to shaming in a way, isn't it?
And very often morals are, they're based on principles. And they're not a specific do X or do Y. And because they're based on principles, there is some interpretation there. Now, there is an honest interpretation and a dishonest interpretation. There might be more than one honest interpretation that varies slightly, but what people will do is they will take, for example, a scripture from the Bible that says to not be judging one another. And they will take that, and it's almost always an atheist doing this. They will take that and they will say to you, that means you're not allowed to judge anyone.
Yeah.
When the actual scripture is talking about not to judge whether they are capable of changing and being saved. So that's what it's judging about. It's a very narrow thing, and you'd have to read the scriptures around it and have a basic understanding of theology to understand what it's talking about.
People always leave the context out of scriptures like that when they're trying to weaponize scripture against you as a Christian. And they're never Christians who are doing it. Well, sometimes they are. They're very ill-educated Christians. But that whole passage of scripture goes on. It's the same passage of scripture that includes the splinter in your, don't worry about the splinter in your brother's eye when there's a log in your own. And then it goes on to tell you how to judge properly, So have clear vision, don't judge others until you are certain that your judgment is clear. And by implication, the scripture is telling you that your judgment can be clear. There is a way to clear your judgment so that you can be a judge of others. And I think that is really what Kurt is aiming at in his work in the Propretarian Institute, is helping men to become adequate judges so that they can look at the world with clear vision. And, this is not to say that absolutely everything Kurt has said and done is correct. And, it's a work in progress. But I appreciate the work that he's doing as a Christian, because he's trying to help us take the logs out of our eyes, see the world clearly, clear away this emotional fog that's being used against us with GSRRM, and help us to be judges of others. And it's going to take us as men of the West allowing ourselves the confidence to be judges to set the world right. Because if we don't have judgment, then we become slaves. Then we just become passive and we just get rolled over.
Absolutely. When someone says to you that you cannot judge, judging is wrong, what they're saying to you is thinking is wrong. Yeah. Evaluating if something is true or not is wrong. Jesus Christ, he judged people. In the Old Testament, they actually had rules for how someone became judges. You wanted to judge, the older men would go into the gate. It was a volunteer job. You'd go into the city gate or a place where people could gather, and you would judge the cases of the people. And there was harsh penalties for if you were a corrupt judge. And this indicated that you could be a non-corrupt judge if there was penalties for being corrupt, and that the judging was an important part of the functioning of society. There is not a society that can function without a fair amount of judging going on. And people will try to make some false dichotomy between being judgmental and judging.
That's right. And whether the judgment is proper or not, it's going on all the time. And even on a basic logical level, when somebody is telling you you're not allowed to judge, well, they're judging you in that statement itself. So it's a self-detonating argument. But, we're dealing with mentally ill people here for the most part. And let's begin to have a look at some of them. Let's get into the examples. So how about you tell us the aspect of GSRRM that we're looking at? We'll read I can read the tweet out, and then we can discuss.
Excellent.
So what have we got first?
Number one is from
Jules Swain here, and this
exactly.
is I don't actually have the list in front of me with the titles, so if you can tell us what the
first one is disapproving.
Great. Yep.
The first one is disapproving. So she says, so what's your opinion on those women who can't be mothers? Men like you make me sick. I wouldn't choose any of you. So she's disapproving of us. She's not addressing the argument. She's not addressing what I said. She's saying, I don't like you, and therefore I won't listen to your message. And because she says it in a public forum, she's saying, I don't like you, and neither should any of you. You should disapprove of this guy. Yeah. Bad man.
Yeah. And of course the actual question, which is, she frames the response with what would be a valid question if it wasn't followed with a statement of disapproval. If it was just like, so what's your opinion on
Absolutely. I would have answered her if she just had
Yeah,
I would have answered her if it was just the first sentence, because
yeah.
the first sentence sounds like it's a legitimate question. And just to answer that question, I wrote that men prefer women who want to be mothers because it's an indication. I didn't explain why, but it's an indication of good mental health.
Mm.
A woman who can't be a mother can still want to be a mother.
Mm.
She can still have that desire. That's still a good indication of a mentally healthy person. But unfortunately, she can't, and that's a terrible thing for those women. And I really
And
feel for them.
and so on your list of virtues, I suppose, or characteristics that men prefer, you actually wrote, as one of them, women who want to be mothers. Is that how you phrased it?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes,
you're speaking
exactly.
about
Who
the
want to
desire.
be.
You're speaking about the desire, and she strawmanned you by bringing in the capacity, which is not in question. It wasn't part of it at all. So right away, we've got a straw man argument, followed by disapproval, and as if her individual opinion of any of you, I don't know who she's referring to with any of you. I guess any of the men of our ilk who
Must be some of the men that liked the post, I guess.
And that's fine. She doesn't have to choose us, and we're just like, if those of us who agree with your list wouldn't choose her either. So what's the problem?
But I really like the power that we have over her. You see the power we have over her? Men like you make me sick. We have the power to control her emotions and feelings simply by expressing our preferences. So much for the strong woman trope.
Yeah, and I guess what she's aiming at here, I presume, obviously we can't read minds, but what we think from what we've seen of GSRRM in our lives, what I would say she is aiming at here is actually to produce a fear response in you to make you back down, to make you go, oh, look, I didn't mean to upset you. And that's a real, the disapproving thing is a real sort of Oedipal mother game. It's a real, I've seen it from a lot of mothers who use this sort of tactic on their children rather than, when there's a level of toxicity in the relationship, between the mother and the child, disapproval becomes the first port of call for parental guidance instead of genuine parental guidance and, nurturing explanation of what's wrong with the thinking of the child. That disapproval, that I don't like it and I'm your mother and you need to respect me, it works on a lot of boys, especially boys who've been raised by single mothers who don't have a dad there to laugh at the bullshit and go, what are you talking about? Like, you want respect, earn it. So,
well, and she wouldn't be using this, her and the thousands of other women that made similar comments, they wouldn't be using these tactics if they didn't work.
Yeah,
now, they're not stupid. These women aren't stupid. They're smart. They understand, hey, I've been pushing this button all my life, and I get men to comply and obey when I press this button. And they're pressing it furiously for me. I don't understand why this doesn't work. Well, two things. One, I'm well sorted out. And number two, I don't care what they think.
Yeah.
I have a wife. If I'm going to care what any woman thinks, I'm going to care what my wife thinks. I'm not going to care what a random internet woman thinks. And while we
are here analyzing what she thinks, I think our mission, that you and I have in common, which is why we've started Patriarch Hour together, is we want to educate and help men who maybe aren't in the position that both of us are in as husbands and fathers already. We are patriarchs.
Exactly.
And there are a lot of young men out there who would like to be patriarchs, who have been screamed at for many, many years by, the single mother led world that we live in, that the patriarchy is the most evil and horrible thing. And we're here to show men that not only can you ignore all of that screaming that's happening at you, but there's another way. And, that's our purpose here.
In fact, this is an excellent tool for young men to filter out women that would make unsuitable wives. Can you imagine being married to a woman who every time you disagreed with her, she came out with, you make me sick, I don't want you, constantly using the GSRRM playbook against you. That is hell on earth.
I would not tolerate it once. My wife has never said anything that horrid to me. And if she did, I would check her in to a mental institution, because she clearly would have gone insane from where she currently is. My wife and I speak to each other with respect when we disagree, even though sometimes we get, emotionally upset at each other. That happens. but we work through our problems, in the most dialectical way that we can. And we aim at understanding each other first before we start throwing accusations or shaming or disapproval at each other in that way. And certainly something, as you said, the emotional incontinence of these feminists and gamma males that we see is that they're actually they're tipping their hand, and they're showing us just how much power we have over them. Power that we never asked for, power that we don't really want, but we can use it if we need to in the fight. And here we are.
A man who has agency, who is immune to this type of manipulation, has tremendous power over himself. That's what he's seeking to get, is power over himself. And by extension, you end up with power over those who are weak. An individual like this doesn't have a lot of agency, because when you talk to them about preferences, they complain about them instead of saying, that's interesting, you have preferences. Maybe I don't match some of those preferences, but I'm still happy with who I am. That would be fine.
Yep.
Instead, they need to undermine the argument because they don't match up and it bothers them. They're not happy with who they are. If they're happy with who they are, they wouldn't see a need to respond.
Yeah. Now, I think I should say as well at this point, just to be clear to anyone watching, I'm sure it goes without saying, because we have the best audience. We've got, smart, good people who watch our show, but it's worth saying anyway. We haven't taken the time to blur out the avatars or the names of these people who are in the tweets, that this one and the ones that follow, because all of the tweets have taken place on a public forum. They're making their public declarations of their opinions, and we're just here to analyze. We don't want anyone to find these people on Twitter and send them messages in response to this. We don't want to drag them back into a fight. We're just here to analyze what's being said. So, leave these people alone, but learn from what they've said and what they've been willing to say publicly. Because what people are willing to say publicly, whether it's their true inward belief or not, says a lot about that person and the state of society that they're in. So, we'll just learn from them and leave.
If you're going to find someone on Twitter, to harass, find me.
Yes, and me.
I can handle it.
Yeah, at Noah Revoy and at
James.
James Fox Higgins. Yep, you can come at us. We love it. All right, let's look at the next one.
Next one is outraging.
Okay.
Outraging, and I use this one in particular because the individual claims to be hard right and trad, and what they're saying is I'm not claiming to be any of these things, by the way. Hard right and trad, and this is flagrant religious gaslighting. Wow, she says.
Wow.
The outrage that she's got going. She's all riled up.
Yeah, I wish she'd written just wow. Just wow is my favorite one that feminists drop.
Just wow.
Just wow.
Actually, you get a lot of low effort comments. I tried to pick out the ones that are the most interesting.
Sure.
There's a lot of people just going, wow, I can't even. They're so outraged that their amygdala has shut their brain down and they can't speak, and all they can say is wow. Females are not going to be robbed if they don't stay and mate with MGTOW Christian men that hate them. Nonsense. I don't think MGTOW and Christian is a very common combination, but anyway.
No,
we're simply going to date up and select men who don't erase us with every breath and gesture. So everything that she said, every single word in her diatribe here is typical feminist leftist behavior, yet she claims to be hard right.
And isn't she outraged?
Yeah.
Well,
outraging is really works much better if you appear to come from a place of value. So she says, well, probably hard right and trad will make me seem more valuable to this group of people. And so when I come from outrage, if a trollop is outraged that you mention that promiscuity is a bad thing, people will just laugh. I understand why. Okay, but if a nun is outraged at what you say, or someone that has some sort of belongs to an in-group, then it's much more impactful. People claiming to belong to your in-group, and then in the same paragraph or same sentence or same message, then start to criticize you for basically promoting the message that your in-group is based on, then that person is not honest. They're using GSRRM. In this case, it's outraging, in order to try to manipulate you. And you can notice the signs and become immune to it.
Right. Yeah. And, As we said before, the level of outrage is really quite disproportionate to what you actually tweeted. You know, like, because if we, I sort of wish we had your original tweet, but you have outlined at the start what it was about, and you gave a fair representation. But essentially, the key words were that you said, men prefer women who have these qualities going for them, and you listed a number of them, and to be so outraged as this woman is here. You would think that you have actually said what we need to do is hide our women in basements and prevent them from having sex before marriage until we marry them off for a sum of money to the highest bidder, MGTOW, who otherwise couldn't get a partner, but he's like, you would think that you were proposing a Margaret Atwood style dystopian kind of, the patriarchy they want us to believe existed and will exist again, which is certainly not.
It's like I'm suggesting I'm suggesting we herd women like cattle.
Yeah.
I hardly ever suggest that.
And the key word was preference. You said men prefer this, and as preference. You and I said,
we prefer these things.
There's a difference between a preference and a deal-breaking demand. I read through the list and I looked at it and I thought, yeah. I would have preferred all of those things. I didn't quite get all of them, but I got the closest I could get in a really awesome partner who I love. And I showed that list to my wife, and she read it, and she's like, yeah, that makes sense that men would prefer that. But, we don't always get exactly what we want, but you have to have an ideal to aim at. You aim at...
I would prefer to eat top sirloin steak for every single meal, and occasionally lobster. But I can't afford to eat top sirloin steak for every single meal. And so I eat what I can afford. And pretty much everyone's like that. We prefer a brand new car every year, but we can't afford that. We prefer some luxury items that we can't afford, but we're very happy to deal with what we've got, and we recognize that there has to be a balance. The preference, though, helps to inform you on what you would look for if you can find it.
That's right.
It also indicates to you what kind of behavior you need in order to attract someone that's closer to what you prefer.
Yeah, that's right.
People should never be shamed for having preferences. You prefer something, it is very personal, although there is a huge amount of overlap in what men prefer. And no one should be expected to have to tailor their preferences to the needs of other people. Your preferences are your own.
Yeah. And, I would have preferred to, looking back on my life so far, I would have preferred to have had my wife be my first and only sexual partner that I'd ever had. And I would prefer that to have been my path. But I grew up in a world that was telling me this, propagandizing me with the same kind of progressivism and liberalism that all of these respondents have been subject to as well. So there's nothing to say that we can't grow and change and move back, at least in our hearts, towards these kinds of ideals. My heart is probably more virginal now than it's ever been. I'm not perfect, and I've still got a long way to go, but the purity and innocence that is the spiritual fundamental of the idea of being a virgin is what we're essentially talking about. Men prefer to be with a virgin because there's a cleanliness and a purity about that speaks to that person's character. And so just because you've had a rough teen years or you've gone down the wrong path, it doesn't mean that you can't turn your life around and become more virginal in your spirit and in your personality and rebuild those fundamental qualities in yourself. And so again, these are ideals that people can move away from or towards at any time in their life. And very few men have the sexual market value to get to tick every single item on that list that you presented. But it doesn't mean they don't prefer it. Just because they can't get it, it doesn't mean they wouldn't prefer it if they could get it. So that distinction is lost on a lot of these people responding. Absolutely.
And I had some people who I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for, not sympathy. I have a lot of empathy for people who came and said, I was abused as a child, so it was impossible for me to be a virgin, before marriage and things like that. And this is terrible, terrible situations. And they said, does this make me less interesting for men? And, I could tell them a lie and say, oh no, men will be completely unaffected by that. But it's not true.
No.
And we have to be honest that childhood trauma is suffered by men or women. Men suffer lots of childhood trauma too. Gives you scars that affect you as an adult, and it makes it difficult for you to deal with certain adult things. And so, of course, if you would prefer not to have had those things happen to you, other people would probably prefer that they didn't happen to you as well. In fact, anyone who finds out that you had a traumatic childhood and goes, "Yeah, I like you better because of your traumatic childhood," is someone you need to be cautious of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are
yes.
they now, the one instance where that might be is that they also had a traumatic childhood and hope that you'll understand them better.
Yeah.
However, very often what I see is predatory people, men and women, predatory men and women, looking for people who had traumatic childhoods and who have not yet healed, because they can use that to manipulate them. So be very careful of someone that says it doesn't matter to them, or they're even they're happy about it. Find out why. Why are they like that?
Yeah, and I think in most normal situations,
don't take it at face value.
In most normal situations, with a healthy pair or relatively healthy pair of people, when one reaches the level of intimacy where they will sort of confess their dark past, or they will share their deepest traumas with the other, the response ought to be, my God, I wish that hadn't happened to you. I'm so sorry for the little child that was harmed. And yeah, if I had the power to change time, I would delete that from your life, because I know you would be a healthier, happier person without it. But I tell you what, how about we take the long road together and we try to heal that together, into the future.
Absolutely.
And to the degree that, I've suffered trauma in my childhood and my wife has, we are on that healing journey together. We've suffered trauma just by having an absence of faith and God in our lives, but we're healing that together, and it's been a wonderful journey that I've led and she's followed very happily, and it's brought great things, great fruit into our lives already. So yeah, that as Hannibal Barker here is saying in the comments, there should always be room for repentance. And we should move on to the next slide here.
Excellent. Yeah. So the next one is ridiculing.
Okay.
Number 3 is ridiculing.
Like. I'm sure this incel would tell us she was only able to do that math because of her hours spent in the kitchen modifying recipes. Nods sagely.
Oh yeah, this is one of the few that's not a response to the other one. I mentioned there was a young lady complaining that she worked a lot of hours as a waitress in a bar and only made a few dollars. It turned out to be about 13 cents an hour. The incel refers to me. So this is the ridiculing. Incel, there's a lot of small dick jokes. I think they're hilarious. Lots and lots of small dick jokes.
They love to project.
The left and feminists in particular are obsessed with genitalia.
It's true.
They're constantly mentioning, they have entire plays about vaginas. There is this obsession with genitalia and sex and an exaggeration of sexuality that comes out in the way that they ridicule. So if you're not like them, you will get ridiculed. And calling someone an incel is basically making fun of someone's sexuality or lack of sexuality. By the way, I'm married and I have 3 kids. So
yeah, your dick's big enough to make 3 sons. So whatever that is, it's working.
Yeah. Well, 2 of them are twins, so I had sex at least twice.
Proven.
Yeah, very efficient.
They'll be demanding DNA tests next.
Yeah, no, they definitely look like me. But saying that a man is an incel, or a woman, I guess, but usually that's used against men.
There are no female incels because there are always gamma males who will go for anything.
Yeah, no, it's you're right. And for calling a man an incel, if we talk about slut shaming, of course you'll get tons of GSRRM piled on top of you, but you shame a man for not being a slut, and that's perfectly acceptable. That's considered a perfectly fine insult to call a man. And the actual men who are incels, a lot of men think they're incels. They're simply not pursuing a course that will they will help them to find a woman. By the way,
they might just be waiting for a virtuous woman to marry. and
Yeah,
until
in
you
which
meet
case
her.
they're called a volcel,
Yeah,
voluntarily. By the way, incel means involuntarily celibate.
yeah,
So that means
yeah,
a man who is unable to attract a woman. And there are actually men in that situation, men who have physical, emotional, mental disabilities, men who are abused as children and don't have the emotional strength to handle a relationship or even to run their to run their life properly.
mm,
And making fun of these men who are deeply suffering is evil.
yeah,
It's really evil.
yeah.
And it's a big part of that is this ridiculing. They'll ridicule you looking for a button to push. And then when they find the right button, then they will attack and continue on that. And apparently incel is one they like to use.
And I think, the men who fit that description that you just gave, though they exist, there are very few of them. And most people who would be classed as a genuine incel because they have not, they're grown men who have not had a sexual partner and who don't feel very confident in the world. They're only an incel until they're not. Now, these 21-year-old men or 25-year-old men who are still virgins, which I think is fantastic if they're not married yet, why not be a virgin until you're married? That's a great way to go. I wish I'd done that. But they might get, to 40 years old and find that their sexual market value has ratcheted up just enough for them to find a virtuous woman to become their life mate. And then they're not an incel anymore. So any of these labels are only temporary if there's any capacity for growth and change. And what we know about the sexual market is that the male sexual market value curve goes upwards as we get older for most men, because we get wiser, we get stronger,
Yes.
we get more physically attractive generally, unless we're on a very unhealthy path. And if you're watching this show and you consider yourself to be an incel or you're the type of guy who's been called one, you're already on that path of learning. You're only watching this show because you want to be a better man. And just keep walking, because it might take 10 years or 20 years, but your sexual market value is going to go up as these banshees' sexual market value goes down, as they run out of eggs, as they get older and less attractive. They're banking on those who actually have beauty, those feminist leftist women who have beauty are banking on their beauty now. But if they don't back it up with character, they're going to have a series of failed relationships until they run out of beauty, and then they're going to be, they will be the incels eventually, in all likelihood. So, don't take it too seriously if you are an incel or a volcel or just a virgin. It's really okay to be in that place until you find the right person.
Yeah, there was a few that I didn't copy them into this list. It would have been too long, that were saying, I don't match any of the characteristics that you say that men would prefer. And I still get lots of attention from men, and they were reasonably good looking. I didn't respond to them. But the fact is that because you're a woman and you can get attention from men, that is not a thing to brag about. You just have to be female and go, here I am, and you get attention.
Nothing special. Yeah, nothing special.
No, I did post a list for men. The list for women is basically maintain the youth and health you've been given, and don't be crazy is basically what it is. Wanting to be a mother, all these things are signs of mental health. The one for men with a list of major tasks that you have to accomplish, basically,
get busy
to make yourself into a man. It's difficult. It's much more difficult to be a high value man than a high value. Women are born high value, and that can be destroyed. Men are born with potential, but until they demonstrate that potential, society will not give them a break. You won't get a break. You can say that's unfair, but it's life.
Those crossing curves of sexual market value is our advantage as men, is that women have this ticking time bomb of fertility and youth that runs out. One way or another, it runs out. And if they haven't found a quality partner by the time they're 35 or 40, it's going to be really hard for them. Not for all of them. And, plenty of women find love in their older age, but they can't find love at 50 and have babies. So there is a ticking
They're going to
time
have to, they're going to have to make sacrifices, just like we all have preferences. If you are 40 years old, and especially if you've never had a healthy relationship before, a long-term relationship, you are going to have to make sacrifices in the man you choose. A 40-year-old woman could get a better
compromises.
man back when she was 20.
Yeah.
You have to make compromises. You're not
Yeah.
going to be able to get everything you want.
But as a
I would say
man,
it's the same for men who don't work. If for men who don't work on developing themselves, it'll be the same thing. If
That's
you're
right.
35, 40, you're kind of a man child, you might have to compromise on things.
Yeah, but that's the key, is the investment, is that as men, we have time on our side if we're willing to do the hard work and be patient and take one step at a time and let each step get harder than the last. So you could be a really hopeless case right now as a 20 or 30-year-old man. But if you make the right decisions and you change your trajectory and you watch Patriarch Hour every week and you hit the gym and you find good bros, good quality guys to be around, and you learn about your deficiencies and you seek out counseling and coaching from people like Noah to help develop you, then over 10 years or 20 years, or maybe even 1 or 2 years, if you really gun for it, you can radically...
2 years. 2 years.
There you go.
Any man who has not got some major issue, within 2 years, if he contacts me, starts coaching, follows the instructions, within 2 years he can be married. He can be successful job, fit and healthy, with a woman, married.
Excellent.
In 2 years.
Well,
it's not unreasonable. I've done it before with clients many times.
But you have to follow the instructions and you got to do the work. So, and that's what separates the men from the gammas, is the willingness to reflect on your own deficiencies and take those steps and do that heavy lifting, literally and figuratively, to improve yourself. If you can do that, then your prospects will improve over time. All right, so that is ridiculing. Let's move on. Let's move along. Yeah.
So the next one is shaming. If you want to read that, I appreciate it.
Yep. Proof of the weaker person is an unwillingness to educate themselves or review their own faults in an effort to be better. That's what I just said. Instead, they choose to lash out like a child confronted with an opposing idea. That's also what I just said, describing gamma male behavior. But then they've thrown it in your lap. Be a better person, Noah.
Exactly. So I think this one is interesting. They're shaming. You see, they should be... Shame itself is not the problem. The problem is using shame to obscure the truth. Any of these tactics, when used to obscure the truth, then people will say, hey, we're using GSRRM by reviewing what these people are saying. We're trying to make them feel shame.
Yeah.
It's only GSRRM when it's used to obscure the truth, when you're using it to uncover truth or help people discover what is true.
These are weaponized lies. Weaponized lies is the common characteristic across all of these. Yeah. And this is the thing, is this person here is laying out in the first 2 sentences sound principles, very, very true statements in general, absolutely spot on, except that they are misapplying them to you. And the last statement is just pure shaming, right? Be a better person. Yeah. It's disapproving.
You can just see their digital fingerprint pointing at me.
Yeah.
Bad man.
Yeah.
Bad man.
Yeah.
Shame on you for having standards and suggesting that other men could have preferences, because how dare men have preferences?
Yeah, well, that's lashing out like a child if you state a preference.
Exactly. And it's interesting that this person is relatively well educated on what is right and wrong, or they couldn't have made those 2 quite intelligent, quite right sentences that start off their comment.
Or at least they're parroting stuff that other people have said that's wise and educated.
Well, they know they're deficient, and rather than dealing with their deficiency, they use their wisdom to deflect instead.
Which is projection.
Deflect. Don't look at me.
Yeah.
Don't look at me.
Yeah, absolutely. They're projecting their own qualities there, and that's a very common gamma and very common SJW trait, is projection. All
Absolutely.
Right. What's our next one?
Let's move on to moralizing.
Moralizing. All right. Your teachings are very dangerous for women who are dependent on men. Feminism means equality in a relationship between a man and a woman, supporting each other's life goals. Oh, and we women are not instinctually neurotic. I think she means neurotic. How neurotic of me. Unless told we are. Oh, and we women
I like that. I'm just going to draw attention to the end. We're not neurotic unless you say we are. In other words, you have so much power and control over us that just by saying you are neurotic, our personality becomes neurotic.
Yeah.
Apparently, go ahead.
Oh, well, to be generous, I think it's maybe just a poorly structured sentence, and she's not communicating her idea effectively. But that's just me erring on the side of generosity there.
Yeah, I think she's saying that women aren't instinctually so naturally neurotic, which shows that she doesn't have a basic understanding of psychology.
Hmm.
And then unless we're told we are, in other words, if we won't be neurotic, so I think she thinks neurotic is something else, like maybe angry or something. Unless we told we are, this is the equivalent of people saying, "How dare you say I'm violent? I'm going to punch you in the face." You know,
Yeah, well,
it's
she strikes me just at a glance at her avatar there. She looks like she's middle aged. I could be wrong, but she looks like a middle aged woman to me. And I've met and spoken to a lot of middle aged women. Women who are in their 40s or 50s now, who really have taken the feminist pill and made it into a license to be a victim in all things. So right there, she's saying, we're not instinctually neurotic. We're only neurotic because you men have made us neurotic. And she's also
not your
talking about
fault.
women who are dependent on men, that it's dangerous, and and she might actually be in a situation where she is financially dependent on her husband, and there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but when you have the worm tongue whispers in your ear, the serpentine evil whisper in your ear that being a stay-at-home mum who's raised children and looked after a family and who supports her husband, and like we saw it recently on Australian daytime television, they on what was it? One of those, I don't watch them, but one of those stupid morning shows anyway. They played a clip of a Brisbane mum who her husband runs an MMA gym. She's a stay-at-home mum. They've got 3 or 4 kids, beautiful children, and she proudly was saying on Facebook that she gets up at 4:30 or 5 every morning with her husband to make him coffee and breakfast, to send him off on his day. She doesn't go to bed until there's a load of washing on and another one on the line, and that the house is in order and everything's clean. Like, she is a trad wife, housewife mum, doing a fantastic job and loving it and sharing her joy with the world. And these hyenas on the mainstream media have picked up her story and put a brief segment into ridiculing her for it, and suggesting that she must be trapped because women couldn't possibly be happy in a traditional marital situation like that. And I suspect, of course I could be wrong, but I suspect that this particular interlocutor of yours might be in a traditional situation, and in middle age may not have career prospects that she would have had if she'd started on that path younger. And the world is telling her and all women that you're a failure if you don't have a career, and that having children and being a wife is not good enough, and that you've missed out, you've missed the ride. And they smash that FOMO button, that fear of missing out, in women. And it's really tragic to see older women regretting the really wholesome decisions that they might have made when they were younger.
Well, and because of them having this, worm in their ear about their husband this and their husband that, and they start to develop resentment. And as they develop resentment, they treat their husband worse. And as he gets treated worse, he retreats emotionally and physically from them as well. And pretty soon you have 2 people who live together, but it's not really a marriage anymore. And nobody's going to be happy in that kind of a situation. It's a cycle of marital destruction that comes along with these set of ideas. If you think like this, you're probably going to sabotage your own relationship. Fixing most relationships is about fixing how people are viewing the relationship. That usually changes everything.
Absolutely. I met a woman recently on a plane a couple of weeks ago when I was traveling for work, and she, as as people tend to do, she started opening up to me and just telling me all about her life. And she was in exactly that situation where, from what I gathered from what she told me, her husband was a weak man who wasn't taking leadership in the family, and she was absolutely buying all the propaganda, and not extremely self-aware, So I would just ask questions as she was talking to me, and get her to think about things that she hadn't thought about. She was in denial about the fact that 50 Shades of Grey is just pornography for women. So I had to kind of probe on that topic for a while. But she really, I was just hearing her parrot all the feminist talking points, but seeing that. And she was telling me she lives with her husband, but they're not married anymore. They're not actually divorced. They're still legally married, but you know, she is free to go out and pursue other relationships. And it, you know, the whole thing sounded like a very sad situation. They've got teenage daughters who are not doing well at school. Mother isn't really handling the teenage girls, but dad isn't stepping up to lead. And I could see laid out before me, you know, there's only so much you can advise somebody on a plane, on a short flight, but and she certainly wasn't asking for much advice, so I just asked questions. But I could see in my mind a path back to happiness without changing any of the circumstances for them. But it would take him watching our show and educating himself on the responsibility of men to lead in the family. She is just hungry for a man to lead the way. And everything else about their life seemed to be ready to go down a really great path if he would take leadership in that way. But he's failed to. And so she is receptive to those voices in her ears that are telling her that she deserves better. Because frankly, she does, but she's looking in the wrong places. And he, you know, so...
Yeah, she deserves the husband to step up.
Yeah, exactly. She deserves the man that she has to be a better man for her. And it would take him also calling her out on the bullshit in a way that clearly nobody has. Because I called her out on a lot of her bullshit in this conversation. And she loved it. It was amusing to her and joyful to her to be challenged on her presumptions about the way relationships work.
When it's done by when a masculine man does it, and when he does it in a kind and loving and patriarchal way, person to person, and in a where she won't get embarrassed by a lot of people hearing it, women respond very positively to this.
They do.
You know, people will say women can't handle criticism. They don't handle criticism the same way as men do. Of course, you need to approach it differently, but as long as they don't feel, women are also very afraid of being GSRRM'd, because women do it a lot more to each other. Just as men are more likely to be the victims of violence from men, women are more likely to be the victims of emotional manipulation through GSRRM from other women than they are for men to be the victims of this. So it's, and you can see them attacking me, but
they want us to be immune to it. You know, they want their husbands and the men around them to be immovable, bulletproof shields against these tactics. So we've got to learn about
exactly
them.
Because they look to men as, you know, especially the man that they've built their life with, as the rock. That's the solid thing in their life, and this allows them to be emotional, to indulge their emotionality, but still have that rock that they can come back to. And okay, I got excited, but I have the rock to calm me down. And it's very important for them, because women need to go through those emotional cycles. They need to process that out. They have a lot emotionally going on inside of them, and they need that stability. So they need an anchor point that can keep them safe. Absolutely. Yeah, this moralizing, it is interesting. She mentions equality. And equality is a false moral. It's a false God. It's a false moral principle, is that people should all be equal, when in reality that obscures the truth that no one is equal to anyone else. I'm not equal to me who I was a year ago. I'm not equal to me who I will be in a year, let alone equal to a completely different person. Yeah. And I think as time goes by, as we start seeing men in dresses enter into sports competitions against women and absolutely destroying them, different things like this are starting to, it's starting to make it obvious. There's a reason why and it's for women's protection, why we separate them out into certain areas, why we have separation in sports. It's so we don't accidentally kill them, you know. You get a big rugby player playing with a bunch of little ladies, and he's just it's like a tank driving on the road. He gets an accident with a car, he doesn't notice it, the car's flat. So it's for women's protection.
This was my prediction, I think, two and a half years ago, whenever it was I did my very first James Fox Higgins show, my first live stream, and I did a little segment on Hannah Mounsey, who's this previously male person in Australia who is now playing in female sports teams. And, you know, one of the few kind of media profiled people of that ilk at the time. And I was saying, you know, for Australia in particular, sports is so close to the Australian heart that as this begins to spiral and happen more and more and more, this is where the rubber's really going to hit the road for people waking up to the insanity of the globo homo trans agenda. People are going to be less and less tolerant of it, and it seems like it's going to be our women who are going to have the guts to stand up against it, as they hopefully exodus from their sports and say this is a gross injustice to be putting us in the field with these men. They should not be there. This is female sports, and we want to be safe, and we need to be safe and have a relatively even playing field.
I very strongly believe that it's up to men to lead the fight against feminism, the fight against GSRRM. However, women joining us in that and supporting men in that is very important because, as men, fighting is what we do. We're bred to fight. We're born to fight. And that's not a problem, but we do not want to fight our own women.
No.
We don't want to do that. We love them.
Yeah.
And if we see them supporting us in our efforts, this is part of the reason I'm completely immune to what these women say, because my wife supports me.
Yeah.
And, I have her approval and love. Not having approval and love from random strangers doesn't affect me. Their disapproval is not a thing. And that's only possible. Well, it's not only possible, but that is accentuated by having my woman on my side.
That's
and
right.
It's very important. If your woman's not on your side, you're going to have a hard time fighting. We should move on to the next one.
Yes, yeah, we should. We're inching close to the hour, and this is a riveting
It'll be
process.
The patriarchy 2 hour.
Yeah, eventually.
So the next one is psychologizing. I always say psychoanalyzing, but it's not. It's psychologizing. And this time we have a gamma male psychologizing.
All right, and he
says, guys with your issues,
you go.
Go ahead.
All right, guys with your issues usually get a big dog or a fast car or a gun. # thoughts and prayers for your fragile masculinity. Oh, this guy's got a blue tick. So, we should be cowering now because he's got fans. He's got an army of fans, and he's an official Twitter user.
Yeah. John is obviously someone of. John is I should get the blue tick too, but John is obviously someone that Twitter has said is a real human being, as opposed to many of the others that use fake avatars. But it is interesting. The psychologizing is to insinuate unhealthy psychology into the person that you're speaking with, so as to make their argument, to undermine their argument. And it's interesting because I don't think John's a psychologist, or he probably would put Dr. John in front of his name there. But guys with your issues. So he's capable of diagnosing me.
Yeah. See, and
my issue that I'm a man.
The only issue that you could possibly extrapolate from your tweet, which was saying men generally prefer these qualities in a woman, right? In women, the only issue that you could possibly extrapolate is that you have a tendency to overgeneralize men's preferences. Don't overgeneralize men. And the response is, guys with your issues usually get, a generalization. So what the hell he's talking about, he's on another planet. We have no idea what he's really on about. But I do have a big...
And I think the fragile masculinity is one that I get quite a bit. And fragile masculinity sounds like shaming, but it is shaming in a way, but it's really psychologizing, because your masculinity is your view of yourself as a man, and that is a psychological thing. And to say that your view of yourself as a man is fragile, therefore that is why you're willing to stand up to tens of thousands of complaining feminists and have absolutely no fear in dealing with them.
Yeah.
The two things are not congruent. You can't have fragile masculinity and be a publicly male figure who stands up for masculinity in men.
That's
right.
It's not
possible.
Once
again,
these are weaponized lies, and so they're fielding tactics to see what will break you. And when they fail, they usually disappear because we hit back harder, at least rhetorically. We'll keep rolling through.
Well, what's interesting...
I just want to quickly mention there's a couple of people who've just tuned in, and they're asking what GSRRM is. Just hang in there, because we're going through examples, and at the end we'll bring up the list, and we'll read through the full list one more time at the end, just and then please go back and watch the show from the start, because we've laid out the framework, the background, and the definitions, and it's really important knowledge to have. So don't miss the beginning of the show if you've just tuned in. You go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, understanding what GSRRM is will change your life. It's going to make it a lot easier to interact with people that you formerly thought were crazy, but you realize that they're just using a set of manipulative tactics that might make them look crazy. Maybe they are in some cases, but generally it's just because they found that pressing that button gets them something from you, gets compliance, gets something for free, whatever it is. And they're pushing that button like maniacs, trying to make it work. And if you become immune to it, they stop pressing the button eventually. No,
if you're not familiar with the taxonomy, trust me, you are familiar with the tactics. They are coming at you. You have experienced them throughout your life, and you will continue to experience them. So recognizing them, labeling them appropriately, and then putting them in the box of things I don't give a shit about anymore is really, really powerful.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention with John here is that a lot of men, I'm not saying John's doing this, but a lot of men, they use what's called, I hate swearing, but it's the actual technical term for it. It's called the sneaky fuckers strategy. Okay. And what it is that in nature, they notice that usually the alpha male gets, or the alpha male, sometimes the head males of the group, it's a federation of males sometimes, will get most of the females pregnant. They'll be the ones reproducing most of the time. However, some of the low-level males, the gammas, that isn't really an animal kingdom, but the lower-level males will still get to reproduce by waiting till the alpha males are out hunting or doing something useful, and then they'll sneak in, pretend to help out the women, and they'll end up reproducing. Now, in humans, what happens is they'll pretend to be male feminists.
Yeah, white knights.
Basically,
white knights.
Yeah. Everybody knows male feminist means predator.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. It's predator in disguise. And I'm not saying John is doing that. Maybe he is. I don't know. But this is
you'd have to have a longer conversation to find out. But there's a little red flag there that his choice to psychoanalyze or psychologize you here is a little red flag that you've got to look out for in people. It's not always coming with ill intent. Sometimes it's actually helpful when it's backed up with truth. But yeah, be aware of the red flags, and then find out more if you want to find out if somebody's a predator or dangerous.
Absolutely.
All right, let's
move on to the next one, which is denying.
All right, Port Film Co-op is saying in the chats, don't be afraid to go overtime. Well, we'll keep it as tight as we can, but we are going to get to the end of this list. And also, thank you, Port Film Co-op, for the super chat. Much appreciated. Denying.
Awesome.
All right. The funniest part about all these lists men are making for women is that they actually really think women care what they think. Like they think our one goal in life is to get a man instead of make men leave us alone. Their worldview is so warped, it's quite sad. Here she says, seeking male attention.
Yeah. Here is Jordan. I don't want any male attention. Look at me. Look at me. Look how much I don't want male attention. Stop it. Stop paying attention to me. This is the kind of woman that wears a low-cut dress, shakes her boobs in front of you, and if you look, she goes, how dare you look at me?
And if that avatar is actually her face, look at the makeup she's wearing. She's got it's a tiny little picture, but her eyes are popping out of the screen because she's got this eyeshadow on and this mascara and eyeliner and this bright red lips. She wants male attention. Women wear makeup because they want male attention. Women use Twitter because they want male attention, generally. Unless
feminism is itself a scream by low-value women for male attention. And you will say, oh, well, this woman's really attractive and she's a feminist, but she might be physically attractive, but not necessarily upstairs. Her personality may not be attractive. And for some reason, she's not getting the attention she wants. She might even be attractive and she might not be a horrible person. Maybe she just craves so much attention. This is how she gets it. When you get attention, you get a dopamine hit. The dopamine hit makes you happy.
And she got a few. There's 467 likes there. She got a real buzz that day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so you get every time someone likes her post here, she gets a little dopamine hit. and that reinforces the behavior. And you're a father, you know this. If you reinforce bad behavior in your children, they pick that up really fast. If you got kids that, if you only pay attention to them when they behave poorly, they'll behave poorly all the time to get attention.
Yeah.
You have to, in fact,
the easiest example
poorly,
is if you stop.
I'm not going to play with you if you play like that.
Yeah.
And then they change their behavior. Okay, now I'll play with you. And this reinforces
they're
the
clever.
positive behavior.
They're clever. If you stop screaming, I'll buy you an ice cream. Oh, great. So if I start screaming, then she'll offer to buy me an ice cream if I stop. Kids work this stuff out real quick. So absolutely be careful in what you reinforce.
And for this woman, she's basically trying to deny that men have preferences or that women care about men's preferences. It's more that women care. The reality is that women care a lot about the attention they get from men. Now there's articles going out that if a woman comes on to you and you don't sleep with her, that's a form of rape.
Oh, for God's sake.
Can you imagine? If you don't give me the attention I demand, I'm gonna Me Too you. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, wow.
The desire for attention, if you're a normal person and you dye your hair blue, what happens? You get more attention, right? So
not from me.
if you're not from me.
I treat you, if you've got blue hair, I treat you like you're radioactive.
But that's because we're a healthy, balanced, patriarchal men, and we understand what message we're sending to women when we reinforce negative behaviors. And this is why we're teaching other men not to reinforce the negative behaviors of feminists. In fact, one of people I know, Alexander Cortez, he said, just block them, just completely ignore them. And generally that's true, unless I'm using it as a teaching tool. That's the absolute best way to deal with it. Completely ignore them because they want attention, good or bad. And giving them that attention is not healthy. This is what
I think I said to you off the air before, that I don't tend to get, at least not yet, I don't tend to get any negative attention from feminists online, but I do get a lot of gamma males. And I just have a policy now of, as soon as I see a clear red flag of gamma behavior, it's just block. And sometimes I will make an example of them if I feel that their particular behavior is going to be educational. But most of the time I just block them, because it does not pay in any way to argue with them or to get into it with them. They are incapable of learning from any social scolding, but they can potentially learn from ostracism. And if all the good men and all the men who are attractive to women and who do have success in life and who do become patriarchs, vehemently ostracize the gammas, that gives them a chance to figure it out on their own if they can at all. So that's the best thing to do, I find. And of course, they will immediately say, you're just too fragile to argue with me. You're weak. You're weak because you blocked me. It's like, well, guess what? I'm out.
Arguing with gammas is gamma behavior. Arguing with gammas is gamma behavior. You and I, we have a responsibility to teach men how to avoid this kind of behavior. And so we will pull some examples out as a teaching tool for other men. It is not for the gamma that's causing trouble. It's not for them that we do this. We're doing this for the men who have perhaps gamma tendencies. They're working on fixing it to help them understand, don't be like that guy. Here's a bad example for you. And this is part of our responsibility as men and as patriarchs. But arguing with them is not healthy behavior for us.
Now, we're being asked in the chats, what is gamma behavior? And obviously, we're using some lingo here that not everyone's familiar with, but we will do a Patriarch Hour on the sociosexual hierarchy. Maybe we'll do this next week. We'll go through the alpha, bravo, delta, gamma, sigma, omega archetypes, give a bit of an explainer of those, and then, perhaps focus on the gammas, because they do go hand in hand with feminists and SJWs. They tend to be the male feminists and the SJWs, but not always. Gammas lurk in many circles. All right, what's our next characteristic of GSRRM?
Next one is rallying.
Rallying.
Next tactic is rallying.
Send in the reinforcements. Dear ladies, if Noah is pursuing you, run like hell or turn and kick his ass. high quality men have self-awareness and are mature enough to know that they can't shop for women like they shop for a car. Only 28 likes on
To
that
be
one,
quite
so not a
frank,
very
I'm gonna
successful rallying attempt there.
no. I will mention on. Brian probably doesn't have a lot of friends. That's why, because it'll depend how many friends you have, how many people see it. But I will just point out to the last part about high quality men have the self-awareness and are mature enough to know that they can't shop for women like they shop for a car. Well, if you talk to the very highest quality of men, young, good looking, wealthy, intelligent, tall millionaires, they do shop for women like they shop for a car. Higher class people, the upper class people, the way that couplings happen at that level is much more rational than in middle and lower class people.
Yeah.
They understand that their most important resource is not their money, it is their genetics. And in order to have an intergenerational dynasty that lasts, they're in Italy, the rich families in Italy are the same families that were the rich families in Italy 1,000 years ago. There's not been a lot of, it's the same families going through this whole entire period of time maintaining their wealth. And they're able to do that because they're very, very careful who they allow to marry into the family. And they have lists much more strict than what I had.
It's what we used to call, without any controversy, breeding, being of good breeding. This was a common concept in Western civilization up until, basically after World War II, where it all started to fall apart and history started being rewritten. But yeah, this is the soft eugenics that works really well for the world, is when good quality people make sure they don't dilute their gene pool or the culture of their family by bringing in disruptive or toxic or weak elements. And we're speaking rationally here. This is a framing issue because, you have said, well, they do shop for women like they shop for a car. But the key word you used there was rationally. It's not about reducing a woman to being a motor vehicle or objectifying her to being an appliance. It's about being rational. If you're rational, you don't buy a car just because it has a sleek red sporty outside and plays the right songs on the radio. You buy a car that is going to last for the long haul, that's going to be fuel efficient, that's going to be comfortable. These are rational choices that make your experience of the car more pleasant and make the car do its job well. And its job is to get you from A to B. Now, the job of a woman is to complete a family, is to take a man and complete his life by giving him a partner and providing children in a way that only a man and a woman can do. And so that's the woman's job. When a man is looking for a woman to mate with for life, he needs to make that choice rationally, if he wants to have success.
And I think women are often more rational and mercenary in their decisions about who to marry, at least historically, than men are. People think women are the romantic ones. No, I deal with a lot of men. I talk to a lot of men, real heart-to-heart conversations about what they want out of life. Men are way more romantic. I've had women come to me and be like, he's got to have a job, enough that I can stay home and raise kids, and he's got to be a little bit taller than me and a little bit older than me
and smarter
and
than
a
me.
Christian. It's a little smarter than me and a Christian, and that's it. And I'm like, that's it. She's like, yes, those are the unbreakable rules. And men, you come and they're like, what do you want out of a woman? I want someone that's going to be a good partner for me, and they're talking all about these squishy, romantic, emotional things.
Yeah.
And at first, I was like, hey, I'm well in touch with my emotions, but I'm mostly a very rational man. And I chose my wife because she ticked all the right boxes for me. That was what made it possible for me to entertain the concept of having a relationship with her. That isn't what made me marry her. There were other women that ticked all those boxes that I knew. I had several like that. And I picked her in particular because of those women. That was the one that I also got along with the best, and that I enjoyed the most.
Yeah, but that's a rational choice too. But it's informed by our emotional state. When we feel companionship, comfort, sexual attraction, the joy, the joie de vivre that comes from being with a beautiful woman who you adore, right? It's not magic. and it's not voodoo, and it's not even necessarily spiritual. It's still rational, but your emotions are telling you, green light, green light, green light. This is a good partnership, because if there's joy and friendship and companionship and harmony, this is going to go well. If that lasts, and all of those other rational choices, those boxes that we have laid out, if they're all ticked, and there's joy and that romantic love, then put a freaking ring on it. Do it.
Yeah. The path to divorce is laid down in the dating stage. If you are not rational in your dating, if you do not have some standards, if you don't honor your own preferences, I'll give you an example. So, of course, men prefer to marry attractive women. And I know some men have been shamed into completely ignoring appearance. They got married, but after a while, those preferences don't go away.
Yeah.
They temporarily ignore them, but the preference doesn't go away. And they are deeply unhappy with the woman they married because she doesn't have an appearance that pleases them. I've seen the same with women who married a man who was not serious about his work and wasn't making enough money, and she became deeply dissatisfied with the quality of life. I remember knowing a woman, and she was looking to get married, and this was before I became a coach, a professional coach. I was just known as, if you want to get married, go talk to Noah. He'll sort you out. And I was trying to help her. We were going over some of the men that we knew, good men. And she's like, well, I like that guy. But she says, honestly, I know myself. I expect an upper middle class lifestyle, and that guy can't provide it. And, she says, I know it sounds shallow, but she says, I'm going to be unhappy. This is how I was raised, and I'm going to be unhappy with something different.
Yeah.
And it's better that she's honest with herself than try to pretend that wasn't important and then end up with it being a problem. And she eventually found a man who satisfied all of her needs, including her need for financial security.
Yep.
And so it's important that we honor those preferences that we have, and we have to know what they are first, and that we include them in our choices, And
the more
don't
upfront that we are with each other as men and women about that, the better, because then that becomes part of the deal. Then the deal is explicit rather than implicit, and you set each other up for success. It's a weird thing in the West that we want to play these mind reading games between men and women, and we want to hope that, my wife encounters this quite a lot in talking to, female friends, where they complain that the husband is not reading their mind to give them what they want. My wife has a very wonderful habit that we've developed, I guess, together in our partnership and in our agreement, to explicitly tell me what she wants so that I can achieve it. And there's nothing I want to achieve more than satisfying her needs. And she tells me what they are. But so many men and women, it's not just women, but so many men and women for starters, they don't know what they want to begin with. And then even if they do, they're hoping that magic will kick in and the partner will figure it out through mind reading, and they're on a path to divorce and unhappiness.
And sometimes the things they want are counterproductive to a healthy marriage. So if you're a man and you want to, I've had guys come to me and I'm like, okay, so what do you want out of a spouse? And I want somebody I can discuss Ayn Rand with and have deep philosophical discussions, and somebody that, we can talk about politics and go to rallies and shoot guns with and all this stuff. I'm like,
just
so
get
you
some
want
mates,
a man
bro.
with breasts, right?
You
want a man with breasts. Yeah. Just go get some male friends.
No, what you want is a woman.
All those things with the male friends.
You want a woman who will allow you to have those things, and at least tolerate, if not appreciate,
not
those things.
allow
But
you.
she doesn't have to.
Not allow you. You want a woman who will be happy that you find satisfaction in your male friends.
Yes.
Not allow you, but
sure,
be happy.
But I mean,
because allow can be withdrawn.
Not rail against it. I mean, not rail against it. Certainly not.
Exactly.
Not begrudging allowance, but heartfelt appreciation and support of who you are and what you're interested in. But it's not necessary that she participates in them, just that she understands that's his thing, and I love my man and he can do those things. That's great.
Yeah. I don't talk politics with my wife. I remember just after my son was born, my oldest son, sorry, and I was talking something about politics with her, which I didn't do very often. And she says, could we please not talk about politics? I'm trying to nurse a baby. And because she has interest in politics, but she knows that when she thinks about it, it raises her stress level.
And
their
it's not good.
stress raises, that the kids pick that up.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's
So
it.
she
You know,
said, you
my
can't talk to that. Yeah. You can't talk to that stuff about that stuff with me while I'm taking care of, like, during the years in which I am taking care of babies.
yeah.
Once the babies are grown up, we can start talking about that again. But I don't want
Yeah.
for now. And you
That's
know, it was great that she said that.
what a wonderful choice and what a great thing to articulate to help you out as a husband as well. And, you know, my wife is the same. I think it took her a bit longer to get to that decision, but she is, you know, fiercely intelligent, educated, understands the state of the world, and is curious like I am. And so she has participated a lot in conversations with me about politics and sociosexual hierarchy, men and women. And we still talk about those things, but the degree to which we talk about them has lessened and lessened over time. And I've learned to censor the darkness and the stuff that would fill her with dread about where the world is headed. She doesn't want that in her head. She doesn't need it in her head. And it would be unkind of me to share everything I know about the world and what's going on with her. There's no point. It brings unhappiness into our home. I need to be aware of certain things to be an adequate protector and also to do my job here on the Rational Rise. But it doesn't mean I have to share all of that with her all the time. So I censor myself at home in order to, keep the harmony and the happiness. Let's roll on to the next
I've talked to
tactic.
Okay, good. On to the next one, gossiping.
Gossiping. All right, he should take his show on the road. I agree. Many of us would love to hear him espouse his sexist bullshit in person. He's lowbrow comic relief at best. And then it follows with a tagging somebody else. So that's the gossiping part, I suppose, is bringing in a girlfriend. I love the cage idea. I'm not sure what the cage idea is.
Now, this is some follow-up of, I should be putting a cage and vegetables thrown at me, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. More shame and humiliation.
Yeah, but that's the gossiping part, right? She's talking around you to the girls.
Exactly. So she's making sure, because guys, sometimes we don't know how women gossip, but since I talk to a lot of women and I dug into this to find out what's going on, a lot of women come to me upset about how badly other women are treating them. So women will gossip about another woman in such a way that it's no fun if that other woman doesn't know that anyone's gossiping about her. The whole point of the gossip is to hurt her. And so they'll see what so-and-so did with that. And so they'll tag them in Facebook, or they'll include somehow the woman or the person they're attacking in the gossip. And this is a way to let them know, hey, a bunch of us don't like you and we're saying bad things about you. And
it's like
you should feel bad about
rallying
that.
Or something. So the passive.
Yeah, a lot of these overlap.
Rallying.
There's a lot of overlap. You know, I actually thought about putting this in rallying at first, but actually it was more along the lines of gossiping.
Yeah. Because she's not seeking out a bigger audience, but she is definitely gossiping with the ones she considers to be her allies. That one's pretty self-explanatory. We could move on, I think.
Yeah. The next one is propaganda. Next one is propagandizing.
Yeah. Actually, high-quality men want partners. They want them to be smart, funny, sexy. They want their partners to be creative, interesting, opinionated, argumentative. They want someone to be independent, free-thinking, their own person, a friend, a lover, a partner. Says Doblo.
Yeah. Anytime a sentence starts with actually,
yeah, he's a smart boy.
It's
a gamma trait right there.
Yeah.
Actually.
Very, very gamma. And it is interesting though what he's saying here. So I talk about what I know men want, because I talk to men and I know what they want.
And you talk very specifically too. Like your list is specific, tangible, measurable things.
Exactly.
His stuff's pretty vague.
And here he's talking about, he's trying to propagandize the reader, whoever's reading this, women or others, into thinking that they should be a certain way that fits his needs. So they want someone to be independent, instead of it dealing with what I said, saying, okay, I don't think that this is important because of this and this and that, and talking in a factual, rational way. What he's doing instead is just saying, no, not that, be this instead.
Yeah.
Men who don't want responsibility are thrilled by the idea of, independent, free thinking, their own person, women. They want those kind of women. They want women that they can pump and dump, that they can get money from, that they can, they don't want a woman they have to pay. It used to be that man had to go through a lot of work to get a woman to have sex with him. Now they don't even have to pay for dinner. They just show up,
Yeah.
and it's things have changed a lot. And I as some of the women commented on my post, is that the only one who's really benefited from feminism is predatory men.
Yeah.
They're the only
Isn't
ones
that
that have really
ironic?
benefited.
Isn't it ironic? Because the whole thing was supposedly built, that whole false god of feminism and equality was built to protect women, apparently. And all it's done is made them far more vulnerable and far more crazy and weak, and made men weak too. So, we're really here to smash the feminarchy.
Yeah. Smash the feminarchy, not the matriarchy. That's actually useful.
No.
We need someone to look after children and old people.
Absolutely.
And women they excel at that, and they are very good at passing on the culture to the next generation of very young children. I explained it to my son. I said, imagine there is an egg and you have the hard shell on the outside protecting everything, and that's the patriarchy, and inside you have the soft gooey center where the bird develops. And I said, that's the matriarchy. That's what takes care of the children. That's what feeds them and nurtures them and allows them to grow up. And it is important to have the mix of the two. It's essential to have both. But yeah, it's this individual here. He doesn't want a woman that is the things that I said. The very, very simple list of, wants to be a mother. If you look here, I like to have, aside from the argumentative and opinionated, those are not positive things. I like to have male friends that are smart, funny, sexy I don't care about, but creative and interesting and whatnot. And if I ever became friends with a woman, that would I have women who I enjoy their company, but it's I don't think it's healthy for married men to have close friendship relationships with other women other than their wife, of course.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that I've had to remove from my life, realizing the danger of it and the unnecessary that is unnecessary for me. I've had lots of female friends over the years, but now I'm a married man with children, and it's better for everyone if I don't spend time with women other than my wife, other than my mates' wives altogether. When families get together and hang out, and I get to hang out with really high quality women in the presence of their high quality husbands, and it's great for everyone, including the kids. But yeah,
I think it's a very good opportunity for all of us in those situations to improve it actually improves our own relationships when we're in those groups, because we see other things people are dealing with, and we say, hey, hey, if they can deal with that, we can deal with what we've got. Oh, they come up with a great way of dealing with that. Oh, look how much they love each other. That reminds me, you see an old couple, because your friend group can have all different ages. You have maybe an older couple there, and they talk about the secret to, they're in their 80s, they've been married for 60 years. What's the secret to more than half a century of marital success? So we get all of those benefits from being around these people. But yeah, it's what he's describing here in his, he's trying to convince women to be what he wants them to be rather than what's best for them. Now, a lot of people will see men prefer, that's preference. I'm not saying women have to be anything, although women who meet those preferences are generally going to be some of the happiest women. But it is very interesting here what he's looking for. Not that any of these things, my wife's extremely smart. She can be very funny as well, and she's very creative. She's an artist, and she is interesting. Now, opinionated and argumentative, that is not something you want. No, you don't want that in anyone in your life. You don't want someone that is, and I guarantee you, if he actually had an argumentative person in his life, it would drive him insane.
Yeah,
but
I'm opinionated.
I'm
more opinionated than my wife. She's very close to as smart as me, and as educated as me. But,
I wouldn't say you're opinionated.
Well,
I would say
I
that
can
you.
be. I have my moments, but my wife. What I love about my wife is that she balances my propensity to be arrogant and opinionated with curiosity. She's a curious person. So she always defaults to asking questions and inviting people to share more. And that's rubbed off on me. So the older I've gotten, the more I tend to lean towards curiosity over opinion. I was more opinionated when I was younger and when we first got together. And so we've had that harmonious effect on each other, you know. And so, yeah, but if she was as argumentative and opinionated as me, it wouldn't have lasted very long at all.
Exactly. So we should pass on to the next one, number 11.
All right. Which one's this?
Undermining. Number 11 is undermining.
Undermining. I need to see for myself.
And she wrote me a poem, I think. This seems like some sort of a haiku or something.
Okay. I needed to see for myself if this was real. It speaks for itself. I will not feed the monster, she says as she feeds the monster. Only weak men fear strong women. Misogyny is the mask of fear. I'm functioning fine. What I really wish is that she'd repeated that last line maybe 5 or 6 times. I'm functioning fine. I'm functioning fine. I'm functioning fine.
What when a woman says she's fine, what does that actually mean? Any man who doesn't understand when a woman says I'm fine, what that actually means is not got any experience with women. No, it's interesting because I'm both a monster, a misogynistic monster.
Yeah.
But I'm also a weak man.
Yeah, and you're afraid. Yeah. And
you're let's throw a bunch of stuff here, see what sticks. Let's throw some things, see what sticks.
Yeah.
What can we do? And now she's not writing this for me. She's writing this for other people to read, to undermine me, to say, don't listen to Noah because I'm going to say a bunch of bad things and probably one of these you won't like. There's going to be some trigger word in here that you don't like. Maybe you were raised by a monster. So if I say he's a monster, you're not going to like him. You'll identify him with someone negative in your life. Or if I say that he's a weak man, maybe your father was a weak man and now you're going to identify him with that. So they're undermining me, trying to find some way to make people not listen to me. It's what undermining's about.
Yeah. And there's also that quality of speaking around you, rather than responding to you, which, is quite a common part of that undermining and the gossip and the rallying. Again, the overlap that happens between them. All right. What's next? Number 12.
This one is reputation destruction.
All right. This comment is, this guy isn't a conservative. I'm a conservative. And no, that's not our belief system. This is just a fucked up head case. Quality men want quality partners. What this guy wants is a housekeeper / whore. Wow. Wowee. What a
First of all, I'm going to pretend I'm on your side. Yeah. This seems like a convenient way. If I say I'm the enemy and you shouldn't listen to him, then people will immediately be pushed towards my side. This is why when the really total wackos criticize me, it actually helps build my case.
Yeah.
But this guy, I assume it, or maybe it's a woman. I don't know. It's hard to tell by the image, and it doesn't have a real name. This person,
standard interdimensional traveler.
Yeah. This person claiming to be a conservative, whatever that means nowadays, talking about that's not our belief system, as if there's a systematized beliefs in which conservatives must adhere to.
That's the problem with conservatives, and that's why I don't call myself a conservative anymore, because it seems to be the belief system is just keep pretending you're conserving things, but every 5 years update your policies to be more and more liberal and more, just be 5 years behind the curve of progress. Then you're a conservative. Yeah, great, well done, guys.
Yeah. Conservatives have conserved nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's been actually conserved by them. And so it's an attempt to damage my reputation, to say to this group of people, because there are still people that identify as conservatives. If you identify as a conservative, don't listen to that guy. He's crazy. He's a head case.
Yeah. Make an argument.
And he just wants to be. Yeah. He just wants a whore.
Yeah.
He wants a whore. I'm going to use the word that's going to be most shocking to conservatives.
Yeah, that's right. Where on earth did you?
He wants a housekeeper. Conservatives will be like,
yeah.
But no, he wants a whore. He wants a whore. He's a he's a horrible man. He just wants to marry a prostitute. It's completely
Yeah.
the opposite of what I actually put, but
yeah, we can see here that the attempt, although it's a really limp and pathetic one, is to undermine your reputation, right? To destroy your reputation in the eyes of others.
Now, I didn't post it here for security reasons, but there, I know for sure that two groups of Antifa based in the United States attempted to have my children taken away from me by contacting Child Protective Services because moles in their organizations leaked it to me, the information.
Wow.
So they tried to do this twice, and two separate groups. And they called CPS, making hundreds of complaints about me and saying I was a child abuser, saying that I was hitting my wife, all kinds of stuff like this.
Wow, they're
now,
very good
what
at
they
rallying.
didn't realize, what they didn't realize is US CPS, Child Protection Services, has nothing to do with me. I live in a completely different country.
Yeah,
and if they had phoned the Child Protective Services where I live, they would have laughed at them over the accusations. Because it's, you know, it's pretty clear that they're fake. But in the US, the rules are all of these things have to be investigated. So if I lived there,
but you know, we
would
would
caused
hope
a lot
that
of
there's
problems
enough.
for me.
It would have caused problems, but we would hope as well that even if you were in the US, that, you know, the people in these organizations would have at least enough, you know, rationality and due process to have a look at it and realize that these kinds of rallied SJW mass attacks are happening all the time now, you know, to individuals, to businesses. These groups are what are behind the deplatformings of many people. They just go, all right, gang, for the global communist revolution, we need to take down Nick Fuentes. So let's bombard YouTube with complaints. Let's make sure that we file 1,000. You know, they play the lawfare game where they use the system as a weapon against us. And we have, on the right, we've been very reluctant to use that response, you know, to respond in kind. But that's beginning to shift. And this is something Vox Day.
We're either going to respond to it. Yeah, we're going to either respond to it legally ourselves, or we're going to let it go long enough that we have to respond the old-fashioned way with violence. And if we can respond to it legally, let's see if we can solve things peacefully before we don't leave ourselves with any other options.
Yeah, and in my experience,
it's much better to do that.
In my experience of life generally at the moment, it tends to be that the hysteria and the SJW cuckery isn't really always there in the people who have real authority to destroy your life. You know, the people who make these calls legally, the judges, the police. I'm not saying it's the same in every case. A lot of people get screwed over by the system too. But for the most part, we present so much more rationally and we have, you know, clean records and clean lives. We're not criminals like the people who are complaining against us. So it doesn't take very much to point out, you know, that this is just an ideological attack. This is just people who don't like my opinions, and to sort of, you know, throw the case out. But yeah, it would absolutely suck to have to do that and to be dragged into that. And I really feel for the people who are going through it. But we do need to be willing to use the system to fight back as well. So, you know, when people
we have to be willing to fight, or it's just going to get worse. It will just get worse if we don't fight back. Twice as hard.
If they're seeking, you know, to destroy your life, and you have the legal means, if the system can work in your favor, hit them back twice as hard. You know, that's the only way we stop the attacks, is to stop crying and moaning about deplatforming and the other methods that they use against us, and start winning. So,
and you know, the left is very organized. They're very organized in this, and they have ways and methods in which they function. The right needs to get organized as well. If you see someone get deplatformed, reach out to them. And when you're deplatformed, reach out to them again and say, hey, it happened to me too. Why don't we go in together on a lawsuit? Why don't we do a class action lawsuit? We've been deplatformed by the same group of people. Oh, it's the same George Soros funded organization that deplatformed both of us. Maybe we can go together on this. You know, you can bring a RICO Act. Private citizens, as far as I understand, can bring a RICO Act. It's a racketeering and collusion act in the US. So if there is something like George Soros organization is behind it and using other organizations as a shield, there are actual criminal prosecutions that can be brought against. And people don't realize this. You don't just have civil court. It is possible to bring accusations in criminal court as well as a private citizen. I know people that have done that. And there are options. The problem is they're usually expensive. They require very skilled lawyers, especially if it's not the state that's bringing up the case. And a lot of research and tons of documentation, and you're fighting big powers. We're not going to do this as a bunch of individuals. We're going to have to be like the 300 standing shoulder to shoulder. Yeah. And, the first couple of waves of people that stand up are going to take a beating, but it's this or our children are going to be being gulags. We're either going to stand up to it now in our generation, or it'll be worse for our children.
Amen. All right, let's move along.
So this 13th one doesn't fit one of the GSRRMs. This is just to end our discussion on a funny note here. I get a lot of these semi-sexual comments from women that don't like what I'm saying but do. They offering to spank me, telling me all I need is a good shagging, this type of stuff.
Yeah.
It's funny. But it does show that that they have this very deep fascination, or I shouldn't say fascination, fetish for being dominated, and they will bring this up from time to time. That's why they like The Handmaid's Tale so much.
And 50 Shades.
They're pretending they don't like it. Yeah, they're pretending they don't like it. But yeah, there's a lot of desire for that. You don't watch a show like that over and over again if you don't have some sort of a fetish for that. You don't watching 50 Shades of Grey if you don't have some sort of a fetish for being dominated. And there are a lot of women that's seems to be 50, what they want.
Yeah, it's what they want. They've just taken it to toxic levels. It's okay for a woman to want her man to be physically capable of dominating her. It's okay for a woman to want to be in the act of sex, to be physically dominated by her man. It's perfectly natural, normal, and healthy for that to be the case. But it's this delusion that a man who's emotionally ice cold and, that the Christian Grey character who's this it's this delusion that, like the Gamma has the secret king delusion, the feminist has, or the feminist woman has the secret queen delusion, where she'll be the one to break that icy shell around his heart and make him a soft lover man. But he'll still be sexually dominating, and he'll still be a billionaire and absolutely jacked and all of it. It's like
all the things that made him successful. Yeah, he'll retain all the things that made him successful, but she'll fix his emotional problems, and he still won't leave her for a way better upgraded woman now that he can actually have an emotional connection with women. Yeah, it is a delusion.
But it's pornography, and all pornography is delusion. It's selling sexual delusion to men and women. But I like your response. Spicy offer, but my wife would object. And it's amazing how much you have to remind or point out to people who are using these GSRRM tactics against you that they don't apply. You're not an incel. You're a patriarch. You're a married man with 3 children, and probably more on the way in the future. You will be a grandfather. You are literally the opposite of what they're describing. So, and it wouldn't take much research for them to find that out before they drop these stupid remarks in, but they don't care.
It's in my bio on Twitter.
That's right. I mean, GSRRM are weaponized lies, and I guess that's what we're really trying to get across in Toto tonight, is that, we can and should shame them, and to a degree we are shaming them tonight. Shame is only a bad thing to put on people if you're shaming them for speaking the truth, if you're shaming them for being virtuous. But if you're shaming vice and you're shaming lies, then absolutely shame is an appropriate and necessary weapon to use. We should shame the liars and we should shame the sluts, because it makes a better world if we do that. And it's that we've stopped doing that, but also been so receptive to their shaming us that the men of the West have become weak. So it's time to be aware of these tactics, become bulletproof to them by really understanding them. There's a lot more reading that you can do on this. The Proprietarian Institute is the source of this particular taxonomy, and I found it to be very, very useful. And we also have talked about the sociosexual hierarchy a bit. Check out Vox Day's work on that, another great source. Understanding these ideas and properly labeling them is how we become bulletproof to them and able to resist their influence, so that we can just carry on being truthful, being honest, representing the world in an empirical way, in a factual way, and strengthening those things that made Western civilization great. And
Excellent,
I think we have
thank
one
you.
more slide.
You know, if you're a man or a woman and people are using GSSRM against you, and you're having a difficult time responding to it, you know, contact me. I can help you to become more immune to it. I can coach you through that process. If you are someone who does this to other people and you want to stop, if you're a woman and you're shaming your husband, you're tearing him down, and you want to stop doing this, it can be very, very difficult. Contact me. I can help you through the process of changing your frame so that this isn't a problem for you anymore.
Excellent. And let's jump across. Oh, what's this slide here? Please don't cyberbully me about my micro wiener. That's a good response.
Yeah, I got tons and tons. Facebook seems to be more about mindless memes. On Facebook, there was thousands of memes sent to me, something along that about, you know, penis jokes. The left is obsessed with genitalia. They're absolutely, you know, I guess you get obsessed with what you don't have, and so they're obsessed with their genitalia and with other people's genitalia. And of course, if you're a man and you disagree with a woman, you must have a small penis. This is one of the de facto insults for men.
And you know, I think it's important for us all to remember that you know, shape or size, maybe they're a factor in some things, but you know, a penis is only as good as the children it produces.
Yeah, it's a tool for producing children, and yes, you can get lots of pleasure as well, and that's part of the process. It's part of the bonding with your spouse. But yeah, it is funny, their obsession with it. I put this here for a good laugh at the end.
It's great.
To show you you have to, part of becoming immune to GSRRM is being willing to laugh about it.
Yes.
You know, you have to have
Don't
a
get
strong
triggered, whatever
understanding
you
of
do.
who you are.
Don't get triggered. You know, that's what they do. And being able to take the insults as, you know, like, oh wow, that was cute. You know, let's have a chuckle and move on. Definitely a better approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And so one more time, just to go through the list briefly for those who are asking. These are the tactics of GSRRM broken down as much as they can be at this stage. I'm sure the list will expand in time, but we went through tonight examples of disapproving, outraging, ridiculing, shaming, moralizing, psychologizing, denying, rallying, gossiping, propagandizing, undermining, and reputation destruction. And these are the weapons that have been used against you in your life. They will be used against you more. But if you have the tools and the intellectual understanding to recognize them so that you don't get triggered and you don't get manipulated by them, you've become bulletproof, and you can get on with having real conversations with normal people like Noah and myself about how things really are and the way the world really works. And we can get on with the business of taking action to improve ourselves and our families, and by extension, rebuilding the patriarchy and restoring the greatness of Western civilization. No, it's been great hanging out with you tonight. Quite a long one, but enjoyable.
Yeah, this was excellent. I think it was very important to take the extra few minutes and complete it. You know, I think this video will be foundational for anyone that is finding it hard to stand up to internet bullies, to people who are online, who are manipulative, but even for manipulative people in their own life. And I really believe this is going to help a lot of people to have a happier and emotionally healthier life and better relationships with their family and friends.
And I think maybe what we can do a few episodes down the line, so we're not being too repetitive, is do another show where we go through examples, but rather than merely tweets from random lunatics on Twitter, we could take some very famous examples of these tactics being used. You know, one that springs to mind is the moralizing of Greta Thunberg saying, "How dare you!" You know, we can find examples that people are familiar with in the rhetoric of famous people. We can find some presidential examples. You know, I'm sure we could troll through Martin Luther King's famous speech and find some examples in there.
You might be able to find some GSRRM in Trump's in the responses to Trump's Twitter feed. That's probably a gold mine.
Look, we could find GSRRM tactics being used positively by Trump as well himself. He is a master of rhetoric, and what we've got to remember is that these are rhetorical tools that we too can and should use, as long as they're being used in the service of truth, goodness, and beauty. If they're being used for lies and evil and ugliness, then they're evil. But they can be used for good. Maybe not all of them. I'd have to look at them closely to make that call, but some of them definitely can be used for good. So yeah, the deeper our understanding of these weapons, the better. And we'll get into that down the line. But yeah, I think maybe next week we'll have a stab at the socio-sexual hierarchy and outline that for some of our viewers.
Yes, because the patriarchy is not a flat organization. There is a hierarchy to a patriarchy. Matriarchy tends to be a little more flat. But definitely the patriarchy is a hierarchy, so it's very important we discuss that.
Excellent. Well, great hanging out with you as always, Noah, and thanks to all the people watching. I'm really happy with how this is growing already this year. This is our second week back now, and we're already, or is it third? I don't know. We're flying along in any case. No, this is our second, and we've got double the viewers tonight, and I'm sure it's just going to keep growing because men and women of the West are hungry to get into these ideas and to understand them. And we want to make things great in the world again, so we have to build the patriarchy one person, one man, one family at a time, and that's what we're doing here at Patriarch Hour. Great hanging out, and we'll see you all next week. Good night. Thank you for watching this Rational Rise TV presentation. If you're not already a member, we ask you please come and join us and show your support at rationalrise.tv. This is our very own independent, self-managed video streaming platform where we cannot be controlled by the thought police. We're doing it our own way, and we'd love you to come and join us from as little as $5 per month. If you've enjoyed my show and you'd like to support me in other ways, a great way to do that is to grab a copy of my book, The Ghost of Emily, or its sequel, The Ghost of Delacroix. Both of them are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Booktopia, and all the rest. And not only available in paperback, but in gorgeous hardcover too, for the people who want to keep archive quality long-term books on their bookshelf like I do. So please grab a copy of one of my books. They're excellent, adventurous science fiction laced with philosophy, religion, family, men of the West, war, violence, guns, all the things that we like to talk about here on the James Fox Higgins Show. And of course, you can join us as well at our new social network, championsofthelight.com. This is a brand new platform. We're still getting started, but we would love for you to come and request to join. And gradually, we're going to be inviting people in to create an awesome community of like minds to share these ideas and to celebrate all of the beauty and the culture and the history of the European peoples, as well as to uplift and support the future of Western Christendom. Thanks again. I'm James Fox Higgins, and I'll see you next time.